Hey guys, so I'm going to go ahead and record a video teaching y'all about simple machines and mechanical advantage. That's what we're going to be learning about today. So you guys have guided notes, and just to give you a quick overview, these are the standards that we're going to cover. It's SPS 8 element D. So simple machines, you're going to have to write down these 4 things about simple machines, and I can pause the video for you. But it's basically a device that's going to make work easier. It actually does that by doing one of 4 things. It can either transfer a force from one place to another and move something. It can change the direction of that force or the magnitude of that force, or it can change the speed or the distance that that force is traveled on. Wrong direction. So you need to write these 6 things down. Actually, my bad. The 4 things that the mechanical machines do, that's what you needed to write down. These 6 things are in your notes, okay? We're going to talk about each one individually. First one is the lever, and you are going to copy down these 2 things about the lever. It's basically a bar that rotates around a fixed point, and that fixed point is called a fulcrum. A lever has both something called an effort, which is the applied force, and the resistance force. That's going to come in whenever we do some calculations. We're going to talk about effort and resistance. So here's an example of that. You've got a screw trying to open a paint can. The screw, whenever you move it, that acts as a lever, and the paint lid is actually the fulcrum. So here are some other examples. There's everyday examples like a broom. You've got tweezers. You've got tongs, a fishing pole, and some other ones that are a little bit more complex. One that I thought was kind of interesting is an arm, and your elbow is the part that pivots and in a fixed position, and then you are moving something up and down in your hand. The wheel and axle, you need to copy just this first part. The wheel consists of a large wheel that's secured to a smaller wheel, and that's called a shaft or an axle. The large wheel is attached to the smaller wheel, which could be a shaft, and that is called an axle. Okay, so when one part turns, the other part also turns. There's revolutions. If you have seen RPMs on a car, revolutions per minute is based on the wheel and axle. A pulley, what you need to write down are these, all 3 of these. So a pulley and an axle, let me back up. A pulley is a wheel and axle. It's just got a groove around the outside, and so the pulley is going to need a rope in order to make that wheel move. And when one wheel moves, it moves something else, and you can, this would work with an engine hoist or anything where you are like a one person trying to lift something. You can lift a lot more weight than you typically could. There's usually a rope or a chain, maybe even a belt that's going around the groove, and you can change the size and direction of the force. Okay, here's another example of that. Then there's an inclined plane, and this picture is actually in your notes, but an inclined plane is an even sloping surface, and it's going to make it a lot easier to move a force from one lower to a higher elevation. And then you need to write these 2 in your notes as well. You're going to increase the distance and change the size of the force. Here are some other examples. It's kind of interesting to be able to watch it move, but depending on the angle of the incline is how much of the force and displacement you can go. And notice that the work is also changing. All right, our 5th type of simple machine is a wedge. So a wedge is just a modification of the inclined plane, and it can actually be composed of 1 or 2 inclined planes. They're used to usually split things. I want you to notice that here it might be a door stop, so it's overcoming the gravitational force that's pulling the door closed. Or if you have like with our doors, we have at the very top one of those little air, I'm trying to think of what that's called. But anyway, it's like a little air thing that's pulling the door closed, and it can stop that from happening. All right. You can also use it, this little animation here. It can be used, the axe head itself can be a wedge that can split wood, or you can put a little wedge on wood and you can just hit it with like a big hammer and you can split wood that way as well. Okay, so it's directing the force down on the sides. And then the last one is a screw. This one's kind of harder to imagine, but a screw is actually a modified version of the inclined plane. But if you think about the fact that the threads, if you've ever used a screw before, you know that you have to go in a clockwise direction, and the clockwise direction is an inclined plane. If you go in the counterclockwise direction to unscrew something, that's also the inclined plane in the reverse direction. But that is actually a modified wedge, okay? Mechanical advantage we're going to talk about in class. There's a couple of things that you need to copy here. A couple of terms, you have the resistance force, effort force, and then you have the resistance distance and effort distance. I want you to notice that there's a couple of other things to copy, but as far as the calculations, we're going to do that in class. Stop. Yes.